Welcome back, everyone. This is Chris Kugler, and we'll be continuing our development session from last time. Where we left off, we had a sort of fully realized test level and a loading corridor. So the general idea is going to be that we're going to have the geometry and level-specific stuff like the enemy spawn locations, the items that are loaded into our object pool dictionary, prefabs, things like that that are specific to this one region are going to be all in a separate scene. And in addition, our next level is going to have a different set of information for the object dictionary prefabs, all that specific stuff. When we enter this corridor here, we're going to keep our current one loaded. So if you think of it this way, you always start in a level, right? And then we're transitioning to another level. There isn't really a scenario where we need to load both levels at the same time. One will always be loaded. So when we enter the doorway, we're going to load whichever level is not loaded. So level 1's loaded, we're going to enter here. We'll start loading level 2 additively, asynchronously. Until we get to the top of the stairway, our level 2 will be loaded and in play. And when we come through, we're going to unload the previous level, and vice versa. Now, with our specific loading corridor here, that might fall apart a bit since you could just run and jump off this ledge and get down here potentially before this level 1 has been loaded back in. But for a real-world scenario, we would prevent that. We would put guardrails on this stairway or prevent the drop-off entirely with colliders. So, I mean, as far as testing goes, I'm not going to worry about that too much. We'll just call that, the cost of demonstration. But just keep in mind that in a real scenario, I didn't connect those properly. In a real scenario, you wouldn't want to allow your player to reach the other end of the corridor too quickly. And yeah, I mean, that applies also to, rather than a stairwell like this that takes time to go up and down, if you had just a straight hallway or something, or a door transition or something like that, whatever your loading transition is, it needs to be long enough to occupy the player for a reasonable amount of time that it would take for one of your levels to load, given given a moderate level PC or console that you're developing for. Right? You want to make sure to hit the average on that, and hopefully your player, till they get down or across their corridor, the next level's loaded in. But if it's not, ideally they don't have to wait too long. So let's and you know what? For the sake of our test level, I'm not going to worry too much about making sure this is properly connected and everything. So, first things first, let's get our levels into their own scenes. So, let's see here. So, we have game assets, scenes, and let's go ahead and so file, save as scene. So I've got indoor area 1 already. We're going to make indoor area 2. Where'd it go? I just went right there. Well, whatever. Indoor area 2. And let's go ahead and... So, indoor area 1 is going to comprise our first level. Indoor area 2 is going to comprise our second level. I need a third scene, which is going to comprise just my gameplay components, right? So let's file, save scene as, which I should have done in the first place. So game assets, scenes, gameplay objects. Now, these should all be copies of the same exact scene. And each of these is going to have to let their lighting system build. So I'm going to cut here and I'm going to let that catch up. We'll come back in a second. Alright, so back in it. So for our gameplay objects, we're going to go ahead and delete every single bit of level geometry, right? So our directional light, our event system we need to stay for our canvases, overlay HUD, yes, battle system stays, background music, audio. I'm not using any background music at the moment, so we're going to get rid of this entirely. Yeah, and it's part of this process, probably in the next video, will be kind of figuring out what to do with these more globally accessible things. Like making sure everything's going through the IOC container and unregistering and registering them as scenes are loaded in and unloaded. And also like figuring out what to do when we have like multiple levels loaded, we have multiple background music audio things loaded at the same time, for instance, so which music is actually playing. You know, a lot of things we'll probably be controlling with triggers. So let's go ahead and just get rid of that for the moment. Level, sound effect audio has nothing attached to it at the moment because I'm not using it. System, as our pause game. Controller input tracker, yeah, that's all staying. Player menu, object pools. Come back to that in a minute. Same with prefabs. We'll come back to those in a second. Player menu. Enemy spawn location can go away. So can these objects. And our patrol. So that kind of just leaves us with you know, our actual system level stuff, right? Just the player, just our actual screens, everything to do with that. So, our object pools and our prefabs. There are certain objects, there's certain pooled objects that are going to be consistent in every level, like our guard QTE and our you know, attack QTE, all these QTE things, some of our effects, you know, stuff to that nature. The models, however, are unique to each level that they would be found in. So those kind of need to be separated out. So let's take a look at our object pool dictionary here real quick. And you know, let's think about this for a minute. So we have an object pool dictionary that has an array of object pool lookups. We're going to get items from the pool, and that's kind of it, right? It's defined in the editor. Well, so let's see, what are our options? So we could do this in a, we could have a dictionary of dictionaries. Like that's one way to do it. So we have an object pool dictionary that's just our FX items, just an object pool dictionary for our QTEs, just an object pool dictionary for monster models, so on and so forth. And that's one approach to it. And then we would then have like an object pool manager or something to that effect. So we could do that. What else could we do, however? I'll tell you what. Let's, phase one of this, we'll just deal with loading in the levels. I want to give that a little bit more thought, because while that would work, it sounds a little janky to me. So I'd like to give that a little bit more serious thought before I go ahead and start down any particular path. So we'll leave that, and we'll leave the prefab dictionary alone. We'll just leave those in our game objects, and that's easy enough to remove later and, you know, add whatever we need to our other areas. So that's fine for now. Let's go ahead and look at our scenes again. So we have indoor area 1, which is going to be minus our first person player, our horizontal slash, and our event system, and our overlay hub, and our battle system, and all this stuff. It's going to go ahead and go away. Spawn location, patrol, and our geometry. So here's a question also. What about our, so now we're left with just the geometry and the enemy information. What about our loading corridor? What scene is that going to be a part of? So I'm gonna pop open a notepad here. I'm gonna take some notes. So what information do we need for each level, right? Based on the way we're gonna separate our scenes, our assets are going to be positioned in world space relative to one another, right? And they are going to connect up nicely just by virtue of us setting up our levels as one connected area first, and then building extra stuff into it. So I could have a fourth scene for the loading corridor between these two. But what information do I need? So let's just walk through the scenario here. I'm starting in this area. I come in here, we've loaded in all our game objects, we've loaded in this level. We need to know the name of the scene that's going to hold our loading corridor. Sorry, I'll just bring this into range here. And our loading area is going to know the name of the scenes that it's connected to, whether that's 2 scenes, 5 scenes, whatever. Maybe it's a much larger connected loading area. That wouldn't be optimal for performance reasons, but it's possible. So, similarly, level 2 is going to know the name of the scene that's loaded from. So, if we're coming in from the opposite end of level 2, going to level 1, then it's going to know the name of its loading areas to go to level 3 or back to level 1, and be able to just keep that consistent trend, or transition rather, of daisy chaining scenes together via these loading areas. Yeah, okay. So, knowing that, we got level is fine. These guys are rather this guy this one can all go away. So that's going to be indoor area 1. We're going to go ahead and save. Indoor area 1 is going to know about... So here's the question. And we'll need to test this in a minute. When we load scenes additively, am I allowed to have objects in the hierarchy with the same name? So if I name something loading area name, and I'm going to add a script to this. Just making sure these are all static. Because that's important for performance reasons. And we're also going to go ahead and run our navigation mesh. Yeah, because we have this new room here. So we're going to go and bake. And there we go. So I'm just thinking now I don't actually need this. I can just put this on the level. And honestly, this terrain manager thing's no longer necessary since I'm not using the transitional battle system anymore. But yeah, it's not hurting anything at the moment. I can come back and take a look at that in a few minutes. So let's go ahead and take a look at our scripts. This technically would be object management. Yeah, we'll go ahead and just create this under object management. If I get enough scripts regarding controlling which levels are loaded and unloaded and stuff like that, I'll just make it another subfolder or something like that. So let's see here. New behavior script. We're going to call this guy what are we going to call this guy? I'll call it level information. And really level information is just going to have one item on it for the moment, which is going to be the name of the level, but we might put more information here later. And we'll kind of figure that out as we go along. But for starters, let's just get our basis for actually just loading in the geometry and unloading the previous geometry. And we can figure out the rest from there. So, private string, loading area name, loading area scene name, serialized field. And we don't really need the rest of that. Let's wait for Unity to catch up. There we go. Loading area name. Level. I want to be kind of descriptive of this. So I've been calling these indoor area 1, indoor area 2. Indoor area 1, indoor area 2. And we'll just call it, we'll prefix it with loading. Yeah. So we'll follow this nomenclature for now. Loading underscore indoor area 1 underscore indoor area 2. So just each of the scenes that it's connecting. And that'll be an easy way for me to kind of look at a glance in the scene view, know what that is. So let's go ahead and save our indoor area 1. Now let's go ahead and pop open indoor area 2. Now we do need to do an extra thing here. So we need to file, save scene as. because now we need loading underscore indoor area 1 underscore indoor area 2, right? So that's we're now just going to have the loading area. So let's go ahead and get rid of everything else. So let's get rid of that to start with. I included the doorway in my other scene, so we can ditch that. And the doorway is a part of this whole object, so that goes away. And now we are just left with this this light. We'll worry about the lighting later. I'm going to need to add some light sources into the scene for, ambiance. But we can worry about that in a bit. So we'll save. I'm not worried about a nav mesh since enemies aren't going to be a part of the loading area, at least as of the moment. If they are, then we will need to bake a navigation mesh into our loading scene. But yeah, just the cylinder and just the stairs, and we'll leave the lighting alone. So that's fine. This guy, he needs to know what levels he has, right? So we're going to create another object management script. Yeah. And we'll call this loading area. So our loading area, first off, let's pin this. Got too many files open. Just get rid of all these. Loading area, level information. So our loading area needs to know a few things, right? It needs to know about the connected levels. Make sure those are both static. I'll set that up to be 2. Indoor area 1, indoor area 2. So now, what do we want to do? We're going to have a trigger collider around this whole thing. Thankfully, I think ProBuilder makes this pretty easy for us. Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I think I can literally just duplicate this. Set it to be a trigger. And it makes this trigger collider the same exact shape as the actual cylinder. So, but there's a problem. It doesn't cover the doorway. Well, even still, I can, let's go ahead and just hide these real quick. So I can actually just extrude this. Well, actually, I can select that face and I can select that face. It's a little hard to see with their coloration, but let's go ahead and select these and let us create a face between the two selected edges. Didn't do it. That's fine. Yeah, okay, so apparently that isn't going to work on that. There we go. Connect that. Let's go ahead and grab this edge. We'll extrude on down. Let's grab our vertices. Collapse these. You know, a little bit of practice, I'm feeling pretty good about ProBuilder. I kind of digging this quite a bit. So there we go. So now we have our full object. It's nice and connected. So let's go ahead and, you know, just have this one selected. We'll turn this into a trigger holistically. And we'll bring our objects back in. So now I got this trigger the shape of this thing. And I'm going to add a script here. Or rather, I'm not going to add a script. I'm going to add a script. I'm going to add our loading area script to this trigger. All right, and our trigger is going to know about on trigger enter. And on trigger exit. Now, So we know when we're in the loading room and we know when we leave the loading room, but we do not know which exit that we have taken, right? So here is going to be our second trick. I need 2 additional colliders. Right? Oops. So there we go. So I'm going to have this doorway covered with an additional trigger. And I'm going to have this doorway also covered with an additional trigger. Actually, let's go ahead and get rid of this one and duplicate him again, since now we have a correct size. It looks as though I made my doorways a different height. Whoopsie daisy. And these colliders are going to tell us which level we've actually gone into. Well, do I need that here as part of this? So let's think about this for a second. We know when we're into and out of the loading area. And I need to know which level I've actually gone into. So when I go into the second level, I need to tell the loading area to remove the previous level, and vice versa. I mean, really, I could actually just do the opposite as well and put the collider on the interior of the level the player's gone into. And that gives us a little bit extra time actually too, because I could position the trigger just a little bit inside the area so the player can get a look and still go back if they've changed their mind. Like maybe that's the wrong area, they didn't mean to go there. We don't go back through the loading transition again. And then in that case though, we need a way to tell the loading area which each loading area we need to tell it which we need to know the loading area that they've came from. Yeah. Alright, sorry for that quick little break there. Need to go get a little lunch. So I think when we left off we were figuring out our collider situation as far as when to unload our previous level and load in our new one. So let's go ahead and get started here. So we got our loading area and we know the connected areas. When we enter this trigger, we are going to make sure all of the scenes that are referenced in the editor are loaded in. So for our trigger, well, for one thing, which one of these actually has our collider? So this is our collider. There we go. So we want our loading area on the collider so we can use our on-trigger enter and on-trigger exit. So on-trigger enter. Let's go ahead and... so we had a setup earlier that dealt with loading objects into the game. Is that the Battle Arena? Battle Arena Manager... one of these. Let's see here. So, yeah, scene manager.load scene. That was kind of the deal. Yeah, so we had scene manager load scene async. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Okay. So that's fine. So on trigger enter. First off, it's not the player. Don't give a damn. Right? We only care when the player enters and exits. So on trigger enter for each. We're going to say scene manager. Let's see here. So what do we got? Do we have an is scene loaded or anything like that? Get all scenes. So I wonder what happens if we try to load the same scene twice. You know what? Let's test that out. All right. So let's see here. Well, we also have get active scene. That's right. That's something we have to set manually, though. And I forget why exactly that is. So let's take a look at load scene async. And we're going to load loaded additively. And we're going to leave our unload out of this for the moment. Let's go and get rid of those as well. So for our first trial here, we're just going to deal with the main collider. And we're going to observe what happens with our scene. So if I remember right, this was... Indoor area 1 was already set, but let's go ahead and double check this. Yeah, so that's good. He has this level information with his information about the loading areas, which we do need to do a little something here as well. We need to, first off, we might have more than one loading area. And we are going to void on start. We're going to load scenes. And actually, this is kind of exactly what we were doing. Is there anything else I need to worry about here in this? No, we're just calling it. I'm not worried about waiting for anything to load or any crap like that. So that's fine. So we'll just for each string. And that should be happy. Let's wait for Unity to update here and switch this to an array. We'll have the one loading area. In the future, we might have multiple loading areas connected to a particular level. So we're going to start in here. We're going to pop on through. At start, he's going to load in the stairway. When we on-trigger enter in the stairway, it's going to load both this scene, which, if the scene manager thing works the way I think it does, and it works intelligently, it's not going to. And then secondarily, it's going to load our level 2, which we do need to go look at as well. Scenes, there we go, indoor area 2. Yeah, which indoor area 2 we haven't done anything else with. So we need to get rid of a bunch of stuff. So this guy, all those guys to start with. Yeah, essentially all of those, right? So I want to make sure this is static. And we want to create empty game object. We want to make sure it knows about the loading area. So finally, we have our gameplay objects, right? Which is just our list of everything BS. So what are we going to do? So we need a way to instrument this. So first off, I'm going to go out of order here a little bit. We are going to create a new empty game object. That wasn't the one I meant. I meant to say align with view. I should put it right here. Wait. Yeah, there we go. Okay, I was just confused because my height's not 0 anymore. We gotta remember our player's start position is the name of that. So we need a new scene. And this is going to be the scene that's going to allow us to instrument our other areas. So we're going to just have one empty object, and it's just going to be a knit. And we're going to call this, we're going to add a new script. We'll put this under debug for the moment, but this might end up becoming the way in which we load our game initially from a title screen. But for now, we'll just call this initialize game, for want of a better terminology. So for our game initialization, we're always going to load in our player game objects, but we also want to know about a level that we're going to load as well. Yeah, so we're going to load these two scenes, which... scenes. There we are. What was this guy's name again? Gameplay objects. So we'll load in gameplay objects. We're going to load in our level to load. We're going to find the game object for player start position and set our player to that position. Now, there might be some shenanigans in the way that we are... Unity loads in the objects and sets them all up, and them going through their own individual start and awake method. So I wonder if this player.instance is even going to be available at this time. Just one of the many things we're going to have to find out here. Wait for Unity to reload. So our level to load is going to be indoor area 1. And that should be good. So let's go ahead and hit play and see what happens. Oh, of course. We need to add them to our scenes. So that should be just a matter of, so field 1, grassy area 1, field 2. Should just be a matter of dragging and dropping these things into the list. So we want indoor area 1, indoor area 2, and our loading area. And we'll put our test indoor area in just for good measure. So that should be fine. Let's go ahead and try that again. Null reference exception. Focused enemy selection.onDestroy. It's an interesting way to look at it. So we pulled the level in. Oh, because I'm not loading my scenes additively. Well, first off, we're going to load game objects as is. We're going to, because we want to replace our initialize object. Level to load is going to come in additive. Yeah, and I loaded that additively. And that is also additive. Okay. So let's try that again. No errors, though our light is off. I did come in and I am starting at the point that I expected to start at. Yes, we still need to load in our other guy here. Yeah, this load scene never actually occurred. And what is up with the lighting? Yeah, no log on that. So indoor area 1, it definitely has this level information object. Why is this start never hitting? Huh. Oh, because I'm stupid. And when I typed it, I typed on start, not start. Wow. That's how you know when I need coffee. I don't even know how long ago I typed that. Alright, so now we have our loading area 2. So let's go ahead and mosey on over. Let's see what happens. So on trigger enter, it's going to try to load all of the scenes. So what I hope is going to happen is we get indoor area 2 and nothing else. If Unity doesn't maintain any kind of internal scene management, it's not going to detect that our indoor area 1 is already loaded, and it's going to do something. Either we'll get a second main entry here for indoor area 1, or we'll get duplicates of every single game object, or whatever. I don't quite know. So let's see what happens. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's some stuff. So first off, it did not detect that we had already loaded the scene. Second off, perhaps instead of on trigger enter, why'd that happen so often? Our on trigger enter was detected constantly, or what? So it does beg the question, how do I detect that a scene has already been loaded into Unity? Do I need to track that myself? And by my calculations, this episode is going to be around an hour already. So while we are still in the middle of things, I'm going to cut this part here. I'm going to do a little research on the scene manager and see if there's a way I can detect open scenes. And either way, I will be back in a few minutes when I got some coffee. So I'll see you then.